Am I the asshole for ignoring my husband after he embarrassed me in front of my entire family? I, 26F, have been married to my husband, 28M, for 2 years. We have been together for 4 years in total. I love my husband more than I can even express in words, and our relationship never really had any major dips until last weekend. In high school, I dated a guy, who we'll call Dan. Just to be clear, this is not my husband. I cannot remember exactly how long the relationship lasted, but it was no more than a year. We did a lot during the time we were together, a lot of our first experiences with some things were together. Things did not work out in the end as we both wanted different things in life, so we ended the relationship and moved on from each other. My sister, 29F, ended up befriending Dan in college and they have gotten very close. Since it's been so long since our relationship ended, I really do not care, neither does Dan. He is very close with my family because he gets invited to so many of the family gatherings. Last weekend it was my mother's birthday and there was a party thrown for her, which my entire family attended, along with family friends. Of course, my sister invited Dan. My husband and I usually do not attend birthday parties, but I insisted that we go to this one seeing as it was for my own mother. My husband agreed. X200B. My husband works a very demanding job, so he is normally unable to attend family gatherings, and so has never met Dan, nor have I told him about my history with him. X200B. At the party, Dan was introduced to my husband as my ex. It was my sister who introduced them while I was in the kitchen speaking to family. When I came back, my husband seemed a little off, and when I asked him what was wrong he just brushed it off and wouldn't answer me. X200B. During the dinner, my husband seemed distant, and so I asked him again if he was feeling okay. He immediately stood up from his seat and seemed upset that I hadn't told him about Dan. I tried to explain to him that I didn't feel the need to, but he didn't listen. He completely lost it and started to call me names that he has never called me before, and he even said he didn't know if he could trust me anymore. This was all in front of my entire family and family friends. X200B. I have been ignoring him since the party. He seems to feel very guilty and he keeps trying to apologize to me. Am I the asshole? Why was Dan introduced as your ex-boyfriend instead of your sister's current boyfriend, a family friend? Esh. If you know your ex appears frequently during family gatherings, why would you not want to give your partner a heads up? Even though you felt like it wasn't a big deal, it probably seems like you hid it from him. Also, what will giving him the silent treatment accomplish? Your husband shouldn't have reacted that way at all. He was wrong for that. Better communication might have resolved this. No one is pointing out that the sister is the real here. Why on earth, after a decade, would she purposely introduce Dan as OPSEX if not to purposely stir shit up? And conveniently while OP wasn't in the vicinity to give the correct context. Esh. He overreacted and behaved inappropriately. And sister probably didn't need to introduce him like that. That being said, in 4 years of a relationship where your ex attends a lot of family gatherings, it's never come up. He is a little justified in being annoyed at being caught off guard, and probably had a very awkward and unnecessary conversation with your sister that could have been avoided. You should have given him a heads up. It might not seem relevant to you, but your husband was blindsided with your ex at an event. One you knew they'd cross paths at. He was blindsided with his existence, his presence, and the knowledge that you've been seeing him regularly at these events that your husband hasn't been able to attend. And with the knowledge that you've never, not once, mentioned it to him. He shouldn't have lost it at you that way in front of that audience. But it depends on what he actually said. You didn't give examples. Not sure you're a reliable narrator. How can this guy be so close to your family and yet your husband has no clue who he is? Not the asshole. First of all, I don't see why your sister felt the need to introduce him as your ex. It was a high school relationship, not like you guys were going to get married or something. Secondly, your husband is not entitled to know about every relationship of your life. He completely overreacted and became unhinged. Not the asshole. His apology should be as public as his outburst. While your husband's reaction and name-calling was gross, it also seems strange that you never once mentioned Dan to him and how you two had known each other, that in the intervening years after your relationship, your sister had become very good friends with him. Communication could have stopped this whole situation with him, and it will do better to communicate with him now instead of ignoring him. ESH's reaction was very inappropriate, but from you hiding the fact that you're still seeing your ex regularly, and your sister deliberately introducing him as your ex, he was set up to react badly. You're in this situation because you failed to communicate, and your response is the silent treatment. That's not going to help. But mostly you do. You should have given your husband a heads up so he wouldn't have been blindsided like that. You say you don't normally attend birthdays. Why? I think your husband is the asshole for his behavior at the party, but I'm wondering how long you plan on ignoring him, since that's what you're asking whether you're the asshole about doing. You are married to him and you live together, right? Your embarrassment and anger may be justified, but you do need to plan for a resolution at some point. You're the asshole. Both for not telling your husband about your ex hanging out with your family all these years and for the silent treatment. He reacted like that because he was blindsided, and hearing news like that from someone else when you had all the opportunity in the world to tell him impacted his trust in you. He did overreact, but I understand why. So instead of being immature about it with the silent treatment, you should apologize to each other and stop being so weirdly secretive. He didn't need to go off on you in front of your loved ones, but I definitely see why he was angry with you. You should have told him about the high likelihood of running into your ex that you had a year-long relationship with. He should not have had to hear that from your sister. Wouldn't you be caught off guard too? Not the asshole, and I would divorce someone for calling me names in front of my family. Who does that? Get out now before you have kids with this guy and he demonstrates that anger towards or in front of your kids. AITA. Why the hell wouldn't you tell him about your history? You're the asshole. Even if you and Dan mean nothing to each other now, you should have given your husband a heads up before now that your ex is invited to family gatherings because he is friends with your sister. Then he could have been prepared that he might meet Dan at some point. OP knew that Dan would be at the party and should have given her husband a heads up that an ex would be at the party regardless of how long ago you dated. Not telling a partner about an ex they will run into does bring up trust issues. ARP's husband should not have reacted the way he did, and is definitely TA for his reaction, but it does seem like OP was at fault here. OP also seems more concerned about what friends and family will think rather than her own relationship. You're the asshole. Why did you never say I have an ex coming over the family's house every so often? A year-long relationship with a lot of firsts and you didn't tell your husband anything about this guy. He never came up. You were hiding it, and I'm glad your sister said it because that's messed up to have your husband around a man you allude to intimacy with. If these tables were flipped, you would be incensed. Stop the cap. You're an for not mentioning to your husband that Dan is an ex for years since your sister and Dan befriended each other in college. Your husband is an for his reaction. You should have given him a heads up your ex was gonna be there, and reassure him everyone is on good terms so it's not a big deal. Your sister shouldn't have introduced him as your ex. There was absolutely no need to shine a spotlight on it like that. Your husband should not have reacted the way he did, and instead talk to you later if he was feeling a bit blindsided and insecure about the way the above 2 points affected him. This is literally the definition of making a mountain out of what should have been a molehill. Fucking talk to each other more. Not the asshole, but your sister is a fucking snake you should never trust with anything ever again. Come back in a year and post about how your snake of a sister got your husband drunk and seduced him. She is family, so you are not seeing this, but she is working to obliterate your life for fun. Your sister is the one who needs cutting off. I just think, how would you have felt if the roles were reversed? Would you be comfortable with Hub's ex sprung on you at a family gathering? Also, Hubs didn't need to have a public tantrum about it. Esh. Not the asshole. I'm so confused what the issue is. He knows you didn't spring fully formed from the earth. Do you know all the women he's been with since high school? Plus, even if he feels some kind of way, why curse you out in public? Esh. He acted like a huge asshole. Inappropriate to the maximum. But so did you. You should have warned him about Dan. That's your damn husband. Show him some respect by informing him of shit like that. You legit let him walk in blind. How much more of a low asshole can you be? You are just as bad as him. You owe him an apology too. The fact that you don't think you did anything wrong is disgusting. Not the asshole. Wow, he really fucked up here. This can't be taken back. And yes, being publicly treated like that is humiliating. You have every right to be upset. I can't believe people get so upset over high school relationships. Your husband may have just sealed his fate in the eyes of your family. I also don't think it was right your sister referred to him as your ex. That was so odd to me. Like, why? Over a high school boyfriend that's happily dating your sister? I don't know what the hell is wrong with your husband, but you're not the asshole if you need time to regroup after such a display. Esh. Husband deserved a heads up. Your sister is basically dating someone who is your distant ex. His behavior was bad. Your current behavior of silent treatment is bad. You probably should have given him a heads up. Esh. Your husband because obviously. Your sister because she introduced Dan to your husband without your input. You for the silent treatment instead of trying to communicate like a grown-up. Not the asshole. Your sister shouldn't have introduced him as your ex. You should have told your husband that an ex from long ago would be there. Your husband should have reacted that way. The silent treatment is a form of abuse. You all suck. Esh. Your sister sucks. More than your husband. You get her in line first and then you can be upset with your husband. Info: a lot of people seem to be assuming your sister and Dan are in a relationship, but you only say they grew close. Are they in a relationship or not? If they are, why do you think she'd introduce him as your ex instead of as her partner? Esh. You both have acted poorly here. ESH, you knew your sister is dating your ex and you didn't tell hubby. That's bad. Plus his public reaction is bad. Learn to communicate, or your relationship is doomed. Interesting how the sister introduced him. I have a feeling she's annoyed that you never brought that up with him and chose violence. Ha 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 ha. Esh. This is a communication issue on both your parts and you guys need to sit down like mature rational adults. You should have told him that your sister is dating your ex and he appears a lot at your family's events. He reacted poorly to your ex being there and should have pulled you aside to talk with you about this privately. Subsequently, him ignoring you does not mean it's okay to do it back, and you should address his behavior in an adult way. If he doesn't take it well, then he needs to go to therapy and you probably need to join him for at least a few sessions. ESH, yes, a holes abound here in descending order 1. You suck for not telling your husband about Dan. Period. Do you plan on staying married to him? Yes. Then talk to him. You can't ignore him forever. 2. WTF is wrong with your sister to introduce the guy like that? And why aren't you upset with her? She must have really enjoyed that scene at dinner. 3. The biggest hole in the room is clearly your husband, for not holding it together until you got home. Holy crap, there is way more going on here than just Dan for this kind of an outburst. So, he's your sister's boyfriend, but she introduces him as your ex. Sounds like your sister likes to start some shit.